Removing backgrounds is deceptively difficult. It sounds easy, right? You think you're just going to go in and click a button and all the background's going to be magically removed, but it's not that easy. So in this video, I've got 3 tips where you can use different eraser tools and a layer tool where you can remove backgrounds, and then you can actually create art based on these 3 techniques. So you can create your own unique artwork. The first technique that I want to talk about is the idea of just using this eraser, little eraser icon here in Photoshop. So when you click on the eraser icon and you'll hold it down, you're going to get 3 different options. And this is true if you're using an older version of Photoshop or a newer version of Photoshop. You've got at least these 3 tools. One's the eraser, one's the background eraser, and one's the magic eraser. So I'm going to start actually with the magic eraser tool. And if you want to remove a background, it's pretty straightforward. So here I've got a JPEG of a fish and the background is white. So I want to remove the white background. So if I click the caps lock button, you can see it changes the way, I'm going to hold it right over the fish. You can see it changes into a little crosshair. So I'm just tapping the caps locks button. So if you really need to get in to a certain area, the crosshair is pretty helpful. If you don't need to get into an area, then you can just use it just like this, and the little eraser button will work. I'm going to use the crosshair. I just like being accurate. The idea here is that wherever I click now in this picture, it's going to remove that color up to the point where the color significantly changes. So if I click on the white, it will just remove all the white, and it goes up to the part where the blue happens. Now I'm just going to click undo, and notice up in the top there's this thing called tolerance. Now I've got the tolerance set to 10. The tolerance is the level of specificity for the eraser. So if I move this tolerance right down to 1, it will probably still work because the background is completely white. But inside the fish, let's say, if I use it now, it's very intolerant. Okay, the tolerance is only 1. That means any change in color, it won't remove. So I'm going to click on the orange here. See how the orange is gradual? When I click on the orange, it just removes a piece of it. Because as soon as the orange changes beyond that 1 tolerance, it stops erasing it. If I change the tolerance to, say, 50, it's going to remove all the orange. And if I were to edit and undo that, and if I were to change the tolerance to 100, it's so tolerant that anything that even remotely looks like orange, it's just going to remove it all. So there's no right or wrong number for the tolerance. It really comes down to what you're trying to do. So imagine these are tools in your tool belt, and what you want to do is be in a situation where you can execute the right tool. So I'm actually going to change the tolerance here to 1 just to show you that if the color's all the exact same, it will still remove all the white. Typically, I'll throw it down as 50, and then that sort of is my baseline. So if I wanted to remove inside here, I could click that and remove it. If I want to click this little piece here, I could remove that. So you can, this magic eraser tool is what I would usually start with when you're trying to remove background. Because if you can do it with the magic eraser, it's so easy and time saving. That's where I would typically start. Okay, for the second type of eraser, I'm going to be using this cute cat picture, and you'll notice the background's all blue. So if I try that first technique, if I just go into magic eraser, and if I just go, okay, I'll just remove the background, it does an okay job, but down here, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because the whiskers come down and it forms like a box around that blue. So I could go inside and I could start clicking in here as well. So that's like, that will work. It's not perfect, but it will work. But I'm going to try something else here. Just, you know, it's nice to have a couple different tools in the tool belt here. So I'm just going to duplicate my layer, and I'm just going to remove unselect the bottom layer. So now I'm just working off of a copy. And what I'm going to try instead is, instead of the magic eraser, I'm going to go into background eraser. And the reason I like background eraser is because it's a little more refined. It's kind of like a really refined tool where you can be as accurate as possible. So there's a couple things here to note. you've got a brush size, okay, and I can make the brush size bigger or smaller, okay. So I'm going to make the brush size large like that, let's say, okay, 186. The hardness is a big one because the harder it is, the more defined the circle is going to be. So I'm just going to click in the blue just to show you. This is hardness of 100%, and that gives me a nice solid circle. But if I choose hardness of 0, so in other words, no hardness at all, it's almost like it's very like soft. So you have to, again, there's no right or wrong, but you want to choose which one is going to work best for you in this case. Now, the idea behind the background tool here, the background eraser tool, is that when you click on the blue, it's now only going to remove blue. So as I go over, half and half over the cat, it will start removing just the blue. Now, I've done something on purpose here to show you in case you're wondering, like, why is it taking so long? It's taking a really long time. And the reason is, inside of my brush, I've got my spacing really high. I've got it at 1000%. And what that means is it's taking a long time to go around the cat. So I'm just going to move my spacing right down to 1%, and it'll immediately like reset the bar. So now when I go in, you'll see it's like instantly taking a new sample. So as I go around the cat, you'll see it kept the little tufts, and it's keeping the whiskers, which is nice. So now I can just whip around here. And now this is where you'll really get nice value, is you can get most of the blue out and you can keep the whiskers. Now you may notice there's still some blue around the cat. So we're going to try this one more time. I'm going to delete this and I'm going to just duplicate the layer again. So we'll start over again. And what I'm going to do instead, when I click on my background eraser tool, I've got tolerance. I've actually got it now as a slider. So I'm actually going to change the tolerance now to 50 instead of 25. And I'm going to try it again. And you can see now when I go around, it's much more refined. There's much less blue around the cat. So it's almost perfect. So if you wanted to remove the cat background but keep the whiskers, this is where you'd want to do it. So I'm not saying 50 is right for everything. Maybe 55 is right, maybe 60 is right, maybe 80 is right. It totally depends on what the picture is. So in this case now, I could remove the remainder of the blue, and then I could put another background in behind it. And, let's say, for example, I'll put like bright pink, and I'll just fill it in just with the paint bucket. And we can see there now we've got a picture. Now, it's not going to be perfect. You still want to clean it up. Like over here, you can see there's still some issues. But overall, though, you get the idea. We've kept the whiskers, and now we can apply a new background inside of it. So that's a really nice tool to use. That one's called the background eraser tool. Okay, this next technique for removing background is a little arty, and so it may not be suitable for everything, but it's nice to have like a really specialty tool in your tool belt should you need it. So here's an astronomy picture. We can see we've got clouds at the bottom, some stars at the top, and it's really a gradient background. It's not really just a flat, black background. So this is a really difficult background if we want to remove it. So one of the ways we can at least attempt, I'm just going to create a background of copy. And, one of the ways that we can try to remove this, because, the eraser tool wouldn't work. That's just going to be a big brush. And you may find that the other options, like for example, the background eraser, it may not work at all. You may be hovering over it and just go, there's too many changes in the way it looks to actually do anything. And the magic eraser, if you were to click it, it just removes big chunks, which isn't really what we want, or it might not hardly remove anything at all. So it really comes down to, where you're clicking in the photo. Now, none of these techniques are particularly good. So what I want to do instead is I'm going to just go right into this layers. So inside Photoshop, you've got these layers. Okay, so don't worry about this background one. I've just hidden it. I've actually undone it here, like turned off the little eyeball. So we're working in this layer. And what I'm going to do is inside this layers panel, you have a couple different options. You can turn on and off the visibility of the layer. You can also rename the layer. So I just click on the actual word and it would pop up with an option to rename it. So let's say I want to call it like space, for example. That's what most people use the layers for. But if you click inside this layer, if you double click it right along, not where the text is, but over on the right, it actually opens up this layer style panel. And what you can do with this layer style panel, I'm just going to move it over here to the right. Is you can go in at the bottom here, it says this layer and it says blend if gray. And what you can do is there's a little slider here, this little black slider, and there's a little white slider. And when I move the white slider along to the left, you can see it starts to remove everything that's white. And eventually when I move it all the way over, it completely disappears. If I move it all the way back, it all comes back. So it really starts removing everything that's white. Over on the left side, if I start removing it, it'll start removing everything that's dark. And then eventually it would only leave the very most light thing as I move over all the way to the right. You can see there's a tiny bit of white there. So I'm going to move this back. So again, this is an artistic way to do something. I'm not saying it's perfect for every photo, but let's say you wanted to remove out the star background. So I'm just going to, but maybe keep the stars. So you wanted to remove just the dark. So what you would do is you could just move this down to like there, and I click OK, and then I can add in a layer underneath it, and I can fill it with pink, for example. So that keeps stars and it keeps the general idea. Again, it's an artistic move, and so it's not going to work great for every single photo, but that's one option. The other option, I'll just undo this here. The other option would be to move this slider to where you're removing all the white, and that would take care of most of the stars. I'll click OK. I'll add in a layer underneath it, and I'll make it pink as well. And you can see now we've created some sort of a cosmic, bright pink design. So one of the things about Photoshop that I really like is that you can make these artistic sort of prints relatively easily. Like if you were starting to make a black light poster, for example, this could be a really easy way to do it. So it's not necessarily a background eraser per se, but it's a way to remove either the white or the black, the dark, from a photo relatively easily. But it does have artistic flavors to it, and so it may not be suitable for every photo you work on. Okay, so I'm going to just do a quick example where I've got a relatively complicated picture. This is a painting, and it's got a background that's textured, so it's going to be tough to remove this background. And so I'm going to actually just use all three methods. I'm going to use the magic eraser, the background eraser, and then my layer style. So I'm just going to remove the background and have a background copy. So the first thing I'm going to do is my magic eraser. So I'm just going to take a stab at this. I've got the tolerance set to 10. I'm just going to bump that up to 50 and just see how that looks. So when I go in here, you can see I've just removed way too much out of the gates. Now I may want that. If that's what I wanted, great, but it's not. So I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to put my tolerance way down to 10, and then I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to start removing pieces of the background. So it's a few more clicks, mind you, but it gets the majority of the background removed. So let's say that's the background that I wanted removed. Okay, now as I'm clicking this, I'm making sure that I'm not accidentally deleting part of her body or something like that. Okay, so that's step one. So now step two is I'm going to go in to the background eraser tool, and I'm actually going to go really big here. I'm going to make it the actual pixels so we can see what we're dealing with. So I'm going to start over here on the shoulder, and I'm going to make the brush way smaller. Okay, hardness is 100. Spacing, I've just got it at 50. And again, you just have to kind of monkey with these a little bit. And then I'm going to click on this background, this brown, and I'm just going to see what happens. If I don't like it, I'll just start again. So you can see now I'm starting to remove a little bit. See how it's doing some of her arm there? So that's not what I want. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to undo it, and I'm going to make it even smaller diameter. And maybe I can live with a little bit of the background being touched, like, you know, removing part of her arm. But if not, just make it really big. Make it like as big as you can. Zoom in, and then just use the regular good old eraser tool. Make it really, really tiny, and just start, like, I know this is really tedious, but you just literally draw along the shoulder, and you just literally just clean it up like that. That's like brute force. It's going to take a long time to do it, but you could, okay? So that's just like worst case scenario. So I'm going to go background eraser now, and I'm going to make it 20. My tolerance, I'm going to really put it down low to 10, and then I'm going to see if that helps. See how it still takes out part of her shoulder? Okay. I'm going to undo it. I'm going to make the tolerance even lower, down to 7. I'm going to make the brush even smaller, down to 10, 9, that sort of thing, maybe 10. And then I'm going to try again. So see how small I've got it now? I'm just barely touching the shoulder, and I still nicked a piece of her shoulder there. So I'm just going to go in here. You can see the reason is because there's a shadow and it's the same color, right? So I may just leave that because that's just shadow, but over here I could remove this. So you're getting really, really fine detail. And then down here is relatively easy. I'll make the brush a bit bigger, and maybe to there. And then now I can just kind of paint along. So it's all about the tolerance. That's the reason that this is either working great or working terrible. Too much tolerance, and when you go in here to start removing, you just cut her arm right off, right? But if you make the tolerance nice and low and you take your time, then when you get up to the arm, it actually will just remove just the arm, or just around the arm rather. And then I would just go through and I would do the whole, like the whole outline. And then if I wanted, when I was all done, what I could do is I could use the channel to either remove the inside. So see how I've just now created like an outline? So that could be a really nice effect by, and the reason I like this versus the just the magic eraser is it doesn't just remove everything. It kind of like starts to remove. So you could kind of do like an outline, like say a stencil. So you could do that. So for example, I'm just going to leave that. I'll just clean up the actual design here a tiny bit. And then I could put something in the background that makes it look like she's standing and she's a stencil at the same time. So for example, here's a gray concrete wall, and I'll just move that behind. So that's sort of an arty picture. I'm just going to zoom in a tiny bit so you can see it a bit better. So this is like stencil art, right? So it's like, is it a person? Is it not a person? Is it a stencil? We don't know. So that could be like the beginning of an art print that you could make, because you're basically pushing this painting into something else and you're making it like an art stencil. So I hope you found that helpful. 3 different ways you can remove backgrounds and you can create art effects with it. 2 are pretty basic, which is the eraser tool here, magic eraser and background eraser. Of course, you've always got the regular eraser, but it's background and magic that really do the trick. The key is the tolerance. And then that third one really is kind of an arty, way to remove stuff, and it's in the layer style. So you can really play around with that, and you can make it quite a nice artifact, and you can make a really powerful artifact, and it's really, really easy to do. It's so powerful that you can really screw up a photo with it, so you just got to be careful with it. But again, I've always got my background copied so that I could always go back to the original if I wanted to. So it becomes that. So I hope you found that helpful. If you liked this video, of course, please do like, please do subscribe. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thank you so, so much for watching.